there still seems to be, not just among skeptical Padres fans or even Woods, who's entertained this theory a couple of times.
I don't know what happened to me. I'm full foil, tinfoil hat guy now.
But even though, Peter Seidler released the statement saying he has, backs leadership and wants essentially A.J. Preller and Bob Melvin back, and then A.J. Preller came on and said Bob Melvin's coming back, and then Bob Melvin talked to Bernie Wilson of the Associated Press and said, I'm excited about coming back next year. There still seems to be this thought that the Padres manager could be going elsewhere, specifically to the San Francisco Giants this offseason. And Baggerly wrote in his piece that he's hearing that, the Padres situation isn't as settled as a news release might make it seem, and there's still a possibility that he could be given permission by the Padres to potentially interview for another job in San Francisco.
And everybody asked AJ that same question on the Zoom, and the answer was not one that bred a lot of confidence. It wasn't, absolutely not. Bob's our manager. It was, hem haw. He's under contract, and we don't discuss terms of contracts and things like that. It's a really easy rumor to quash. I mean, it's simple. Absolutely not. Bob Melvin's managing the Padres in 2024. That's it. And no one will, come right out and say that. Bob himself hasn't said, I will 100% be the manager of the San Diego Padres. Now, again, we haven't seen Bob. We haven't talked to Bob. Bob's doing his own thing. It's the off season. It's no big deal. He doesn't need to be doing pressers every day. But, I'm leaning more towards Bob Melvin coming back, Ben, for next year and next year only. But look, nothing that this organization does surprises me. Nothing. I would not be surprised in the slightest.
So here's what Baggerly wrote. It says, Melvin, a Menlo Atherton High School alum and three-time manager of the year in Arizona and Oakland, also presumably would be open to a return to the Bay Area, despite the San Diego Padres' pronouncement that they would retain him to serve out the final year on his contract. Here's the quiet part out loud. Makes little sense for the Padres to fire Melvin and pay out his roughly $4 million salary when another team could hire him away and relieve them of that obligation. Padres would also be within their rights to ask for compensation from a National League West rival if the Giants request permission to speak to Melvin. Hey, a player has been traded for a manager before.
Sure.
The Tampa Bay Rays once sent Randy Winn to the Mariners so they could hire manager Lou Piniella away from them.
God. Oh, God, I totally
remember
erased
that?
that from my memory.
Yep.
That was like, what? Sweet Lou, he was the best.
Yeah.
I loved Lou Piniella as the manager of the Mariners. And then, it was like 2003 or 2004.
Randy Winn wasn't a bad player, though.
It wasn't terrible.
So, is that a realistic possibility?
Or is it just a beat reporter throwing stuff at the wall?
I do think, and I've been as solid as on Bob Melvin coming back as anyone. If the Giants really offered a player, like a player that the Padres wanted, either a top prospect, someone who could contribute right now, and they're not willing to extend Bob Melvin, and Bob Melvin expressed interest, then I could see it still happening.
Sure.
I could. I mean, you'd be kind of crazy not to consider that. When you get a lame duck manager, you're not sure you want to extend him right now. You're not sure if he's going to retire after next year. I mean, Bob's been a little on the fence on that. I mean, he originally said 3 years and then I'm done, and then he kind of said I might be willing to go longer. You would be dumb not to consider if another team is willing to offer someone for your manager. Then yes, I would listen.
Well, especially if there's issues, and especially if there's headbutting, and especially if they're not getting along, and especially if it's I saw it framed recently as kind of what's the phrase I was looking for? They have agreed quick handshake. Yeah, okay, fine. Let's let bygones be bygones. Not a real symbiotic relationship, as I think everybody knows. So I think you'd be right to consider it. I think you'd have to at least look at it. But I also expect, Bob Melvin is a really, really big name, and I expect you would get something big in return. But
what I don't think, though, and I know there's some fans out there who do think this, I don't think that this is the plan. Like A.J. Preller's his plot is to get Bob Melvin, get out from under the $4 million, get him to go somewhere else, kind of slowly push him out the door and make it uncomfortable for him so he leaves. That can't possibly be the plan, because think it through. This is how I always like to play this game. Think it through. There's no guarantee that anyone's going to hire Bob Melvin. He'd probably be an interesting candidate, but first of all, the Giants are in a bit of a flux anyway. Farhan Zaidi's got 1 year left on his deal, and if it doesn't go well, they may blow things up in 1 year anyway. So it's not the most coveted job anywhere. It's not like job security. Bob Melvin might not even want to go there. So are you really saying that after every manager position is filled, let's say the Giants hire someone else, the Mets hire someone else, no one interviews Bob Melvin, Padres will go, you got us. All right, now, Bob, you're fired. We were hoping that you would leave.
No.
They can't do that, because that would first of all, it would leave you without a manager after everyone's been interviewed. You get the last pick, the bottom of the barrel to pick a new manager. It would be extremely humiliating and insulting and look horrible for your organization, for AJ Preller, for Peter Seidler to do that to someone of Bob Melvin's reputation and caliber, someone who is still well respected and liked by his players. They'd look at that and they'd think you're a joke.
Yeah.
If you waited 4 weeks and finally when everyone was hired, you said, I guess we're going to have to fire him now. No one's taking him off our hands. We were just trying to save the $4 million. There's no way you can do that and save any face. I
don't think that would happen.
That's not the plan at all.
No.
The plan is for Bob Melvin to be the manager of the Padres in 2024. That is the plan. Are you open if someone comes and says, we'd really like to hire Bob and we will offer you, the number 2 ranked prospect in our system who I know you really like. You've asked for him about him in trades before. Then yes, you would be crazy not to consider that if someone asked you about Bob Melvin and said they'd be willing to give up a player, an actual player on the field who has the chance to impact games way more than a manager I think ever will.
I just don't put anything past the San Diego Padres right now. That's kind of where I'm at. I just don't. There's just too much smoke about interpersonal relationships. There's too much smoke about and I saw people talking about it a little bit yesterday online, the term micromanager and things like that. There's a lot that can be said about that organization, Ben. It's chaotic at times. It's chaotic. And there are people, I know for a fact, there are people in the front office that players don't like being around. That's a fact. And Bob Melvin's not one of them. But the other people are. This other person is there. And players don't like being around this person, but that person continues to be employed. And I asked AJ Preller about that person. And it's just a really weird scene that's going on down at Petco Park. And they're quiet right now because, well, it's the playoffs. They don't have to do anything right now, but you're seeing other teams interview and start their process of maybe some internal candidates. I agree with you 100%. I don't think the plan is, let's see how this plays out and then can Bob. That's not going to happen. I would say with almost 100%, assuredness that that's not going to happen. The San Francisco thing is very real, in my opinion. I think it's very, very real. I don't think Andrew Baggerly would write about it if it wasn't still a possibility. And so, will we know more in a couple of weeks when the World Series wraps up? Yeah, I think we will. And we'll see what happens. And if it's business as usual and this guy's been released or we've signed this guy or we're trading for him, fine. You feel a little bit better about Bob coming back. But, the fact that Baggerly wrote that on Friday made me go, interesting. It's hard for me to wrap my head around really anything.
Baggerly's a good writer and a good reporter.
He's very well
I don't think he's
respected.
going to say that without, nothing behind it. I think, Bob Melvin's the one. He could make this difficult for the Padres because if he really wanted to go, it'd be similar to when Bruce Bochy left for the Giants. He had 1 year left on his deal. The Padres weren't interested in extending him. And the opportunity presented itself, and he goes, I think Boch was very fair when he said, hey, you guys don't want to extend me. They're willing to give me a 3 or 4 year deal. Just out of fairness to me and my career,
let me go.
Let me go. And if Bob pushed that and the Giants were willing to hire him, it'd be tough for the Padres to say, no, you can't go. You have to serve out the last year of your. Hey, you signed it. They'd be within their rights, but it also would be a tough look because especially the way they got Bob Melvin, stealing him from the Oakland A's, who didn't really ask for anything. They respected Bob enough that they said, we know where we're heading. We're trying to move the team to Vegas.
We don't want to put Bob through
We're
this.
going to lose hundreds of games. We're not putting any money into our product. We respect him enough. We just let him go with no compensation to the Padres. Would the Padres feel obligated to do the same thing to the Giants? I doubt it. It's not. They weren't a division rival.
It's wild that
I think you'd have to. I think you'd have to ask for something in return from the Giants.
It's wild that relationship is fractured as much as it has over the last 2 years. That's wild to me.
The Bob Melvin, AJ Preller relationship?
It's wild.
I mean, was it ever that solid? That's my question. I don't know the answer to it, but my question is, when Bob Melvin was originally hired, obviously AJ Preller, had to at some point make that decision. Now, how much was Peter Seidler and other management involved in saying, "Hey, we really like Bob Melvin"? When your owner says, "Hey, we've interviewed a bunch of candidates, but I really like, Bob Melvin's available. I think we should go after him." It's hard for a GM to go, "No, I don't like that idea."
I
disagree. I mean, AJ did have to put in some work and, with the A's to make that happen. It wasn't nothing to get it done. He got it done. He got him there. But was he always 100% on Bob Melvin's team at the beginning? Was Bob Melvin always 100% on AJ Preller's team? Or was he hey, anything that gets me out of Oakland right now is
I'll take it.
Brilliant. And I look at that roster, Manny, Tatis, all the players that the Padres had right there. I'm sure it looked like heaven compared to Oakland at that moment. Anyone would go, "Yeah, I can work with AJ. I can do this. We may not see eye to eye, but I'll make it work." And they did. The first year they went to the NLCS. And it's when they started losing, well, all of a sudden those disagreements that were probably there from the beginning take on those cracks look a lot bigger when the losing starts in the second season.
I do agree that it's still something to monitor. It is. I'm not super worried about it like I was. When Bob didn't show up on the press conference, the Zoom, that I was pretty domed at that point. It felt a little better when Bernie got in touch with him and said, "Oh,
it was very weird.
It was very weird. I'm coming back. I'm excited to come back."
We still haven't heard from Bob Melvin.
It's wild. And just so you guys know, in full transparency, we've asked for him every week. Just so you guys know, we've asked every week to have Bob Melvin on. I want to hear it from him. Guys, you're being idiots.
I understand he wants to get away for a couple of weeks. The last thing he wants is to jump right back in at the end of the season.
Especially after that season.
Yeah, everyone needs to clear their head a little bit, and I respect that Bob Melvin wants to do that. But at some point, if he really wants to just end the talk and make it 100% clear he has no interest in anything else, the Padres have no interest in letting him go anywhere else, would do a world of good to have him come on this show and talk about it with us and everything that's transpired over the last few weeks, the entire process. I always believe in transparency is a good thing for everyone. It can be a little painful at the beginning. Lay your stuff bare, behind the scenes is not easy, but in the end, I think you're always better off being as transparent as you possibly can.
Yeah, and again, we'll see when the World Series is over, because baseball does not like you doing a lot of big splashy things in the middle of their, to take away from their playoffs, and that's pretty standard. So when the World Series is over, I think that's when it will be, time to get down to business. And at that point, you want to hear, now it's time to turn the page. The season's over. The page is turned. The slate is now clean. Everybody's 0-0. And we're looking ahead to 2024. That's when you need to hear from the skipper in the after the last out is recorded, like the next day. All right. Excited for spring training. I'm here. This is what we're doing. The lame duck manager thing always fascinates me, though, because nobody wants to go into that situation. Unless you're like, "Hey, this is my last year. I don't care. I'm going to go play golf and do whatever after it's over." But if he really wants to stick around and manage, do you want that guy managing under the 1-year deal?